The Dallas Cowboys are about to make decisions that could end careers in Big D. And if you're not paying attention right now, you're going to miss the biggest roster shakeup we've seen in years. So before we dive into which players are legitimately fighting for their jobs, let me say this. If you're not subscribed to Blue and Silver Nation, you're missing breaking Cowboys news the second it happens, and we're grinding every single day to bring you content. But the subscriber count isn't where it needs to be. So do me a favor right now, smash that subscribe button, because we've got draft coverage, roster breakdowns, and insider perspective you won't find anywhere else. Now let's get into who's actually on the hot seat, and trust me, some of these names are going to surprise you. The draft is days away, and the front office is about to flood certain position groups with competition, which means guys who thought they were safe are about to realize they're expendable. And the crazy part is some of these players were supposed to be cornerstone pieces just a year or two ago, but now they're one bad training camp away from getting cut or traded. We've got a new defensive coordinator in Christian Parker, who's going to have his own vision for this defense. And anytime there's a coaching change, guys who fit the old scheme suddenly don't fit the new one. So let's start with the most obvious position group that's about to get blown up, the cornerback room. And yeah, I'm talking about the starters too, not just the depth pieces. Day'Ron Bland and Trevon Diggs are both theoretically locked in as the starting outside corners. But here's what nobody is talking about. If the Cowboys draft a corner in the first round, or bring in a veteran free agent on a prove-it deal, somebody is losing snaps, and maybe even their job entirely. Bland is the one that worries me more from a roster security standpoint, and I'll tell you why. The Cowboys designed his contract to be restructured, but they didn't do it, which tells you something about how they view his future, especially with that foot injury that's been lingering. If Bland can pass a physical, the team would actually save over $4 million by cutting him after this season, and that number jumps to $13 million if they do it post-June 1st. Now, his 2027 money doesn't become fully guaranteed until March 17th, so the Cowboys have an out if they want to take it. In 2023, Bland was absolutely elite. He played almost exclusively on the outside, despite what some people keep trying to say about him being a nickel guy. That was 2022 when he was in the slot. But the last 2 years, he's been on the boundary, and the production just hasn't been the same. The foot is a massive concern because if he's not healthy, and he's not moving like he did during that insane interception streak, then what are we doing here? You can't pay a corner big money if he can't stay on the field or can't turn his hips the way he used to. And that's the brutal reality of this league. Diggs, on the other hand, is the bigger name and he's got the pedigree, but he's also coming off another year where the splash plays were there, but so were the blown coverages. And with a new DC coming in, who knows if Parker even wants to play the same coverage concepts that Diggs thrives in? So if they draft someone like Jody Barron or Travis Hunter, if he somehow falls, or even a guy in the second round that corner is going to play, and that means someone's sitting. But here's where it gets even more crowded. You've got Kalen Carson and Darjuan Strickland, who are both fringe roster guys right now, and if the Cowboys add another corner in the draft, those two might not even make the 53-man roster. Carson is on his third defensive coordinator in 3 years, and the guy who drafted him isn't even with the team anymore. He's been wildly inconsistent and hasn't shown that he can be trusted in meaningful snaps, and when you're a developmental corner who hasn't developed, that's a problem. Strickland was brought in under the previous regime, and he played a decent amount of snaps last year, but he wasn't impactful. He had one interception that was basically gifted to him, and outside of that, he was pretty much invisible. And now he's also on his third coordinator in 3 seasons if you count his preseason time with the Chargers. The Cowboys are bringing in competition at every level of the corner room. You've got Kobe Bryant, who's more of an outside guy. You've got Andrew Booth, who can play inside or outside. Josh Butler is back as a camp body. And then there's the draft picks that are coming. So you're looking at maybe 8 or 9 guys competing for 5 or 6 spots. And the math doesn't math. If Carson and Strickland don't have stellar training camps and preseason performances, I'm telling you right now they're getting cut. And it might not even be close. The Cowboys are clearly trying to upgrade the back end of this defense, and if you're a depth corner who hasn't proven anything, you're in serious danger. So of those guys, who do you trust more right now? Because I'm struggling to trust either one of them. Let's move to the offensive side of the ball, because there's a receiver who should be sweating bullets right now, and his name is Jonathan Mingo. This trade was an absolute disaster from day one. The Cowboys gave up a fourth-round pick to get him from Carolina, and he's done absolutely nothing in a Dallas uniform. 6 catches in 14 games is pathetic, and there's no other way to say it. That's not even backup receiver production, that's like emergency depth guy numbers. Mingo already took a pay cut on his guaranteed money, which tells you the team wasn't happy with what they were seeing. And now he's facing even more competition once the draft happens, because you know the Cowboys are going to add a receiver at some point, whether it's day 3 or undrafted free agency. Right now, Mingo is maybe the 5th receiver on the depth chart, and the Cowboys usually only keep 5 or 6 receivers on the roster, so if they draft somebody, or if a guy like Jalen Tolbert takes another step forward, Mingo could easily be the odd man out. The crazy part is the Cowboys traded real draft capital for this dude, and now he might not even make the team. That's how bad the evaluation was and how poor the return has been. And I don't know if it's a scheme fit thing or if he just can't play, but either way, it's not working. Would you keep Mingo on the roster or cut bait and admit the trade was a mistake? Let me know in the comments, because I'm genuinely curious how much rope you'd give this guy. For me, the leash is incredibly short, and if he doesn't show something in camp, he's gone. Now let's talk about the linebacker situation, because it's borderline catastrophic right now, and there are guys who are starting by default simply because there's nobody else. Shamar James is currently the number 2 linebacker on this roster, and that should terrify every single Cowboys fan watching this. I don't hate James as a depth piece or special teams guy, but if he's your second linebacker in week 1, something has gone horribly wrong in the offseason. He was fine last year in limited action, but there were no splash plays, no pass breakups, nothing that makes you think he's a legitimate starter in this league, and the fact that he's even in the conversation for significant snaps tells you how thin this position is. The good news is, the Cowboys know this, and they're absolutely going to add multiple linebackers before the season starts, whether that's in the draft or through post-draft free agency or both. So James is going to go from being the number 2 guy to being the number 4 or 5 guy real quick. That's not a bad thing for him, actually, because it means he's back in a role that fits his skill set, but it does mean his snap count is going to plummet. And if you're a fringe roster guy who's not playing on defense and you're not elite on special teams, then you're in danger. So James better make sure he's showing out on kick coverage and punt team, because that might be the only thing keeping him employed. Another guy who's in a weird spot is DeMarvion Overshown. And I know people love him, but we need to see him stay healthy for a full season before we crown him anything. He's talented, no doubt, but the injuries are piling up, and at some point you have to wonder if his body can hold up over 16 or 17 games. The Cowboys need to add a legitimate starting linebacker next to him, someone who can cover, someone who can thump in the run game, and someone who has actual NFL starting experience. Right now, the depth chart behind Overshown is a bunch of question marks, and that's not how you build a defense that can compete in January if you even make it that far. How many linebackers do you think the Cowboys add between now and training camp? I'm saying at least 3 new faces, and probably one of them is a day 2 pick in the draft. They can't go into another season this thin at the position, or they're going to get run over by every halfway decent rushing attack they face. Here's one that caught me off guard. Marist Liufau is apparently moving from linebacker to edge rusher, and I don't know if that's a vote of confidence or a last-ditch effort to find him a role before they cut him. When teams move a guy to a completely different position, it's usually not because they think he's crushing it at his current spot. It's because they're trying to see if there's any possible way to keep him on the roster. This feels like when the Cowboys moved Kelvin Joseph from outside corner to nickel as a last chance to salvage something out of the pick. Liufau wasn't good enough inside, so now they're going to see if he can rush the passer. But here's the problem. The edge room is crowded too. You've got Micah Parsons, obviously. You've got DeMarcus Lawrence, who just restructured. You've got Chauncey Golston, who's a solid rotational piece. And then you've got Sam Williams coming back from injury, who the Cowboys clearly still believe in, even though I wouldn't have brought him back. That's 4 guys who are locks to make the roster. Then you've got Marshawn Kneeland, who was a second-round pick last year, so he's not going anywhere. And then you've got Carl Lawson, who they just signed. So that's 6 edge rushers before you even get to Liufau. And, oh, by the way, the Cowboys draft an edge rusher almost every single year, so, there's going to be a rookie in the mix too. That's 7 or 8 guys competing for maybe 5 or 6 spots. So Liufau is going to have to absolutely dominate in the preseason to make this team. The one thing he has going for him is special teams, because he's always played with his hair on fire in coverage units, and that could be his saving grace, but I wouldn't bet my money on him making the 53. Luke Schoonmaker is another guy who needs to be nervous, and I know some people are going to defend him, but the production is just not there for a second-round tight end. The Cowboys came out after last season and said they thought Schoonmaker made progress and got better as the year went on. And maybe they saw something in practice that we didn't see on Sundays, but from a statistical and film standpoint, I didn't see it. He's not a difference maker in the passing game, and he's not a mauler in the run game. So what exactly is he doing out there? This is one of the deepest tight end draft classes in years. There are reports that some evaluators have 15 to 20 tight ends with draftable grades. So if the Cowboys take a tight end on day 3, that rookie is going to push Schoonmaker for a roster spot, especially if they also keep Brevin Spann-Ford, who's a better blocker and showed more in limited action last year. Princeton Fant is back on the roster, so he's your number 1. Jake Ferguson is obviously the starter. Spann-Ford has a role. And if they draft somebody that's 4 tight ends, which is usually the max a team carries. So where does that leave Schoonmaker? He's the odd man out unless he shows dramatic improvement in camp. For a guy who was picked in the 2nd round to be on the roster bubble in year 2 is a massive indictment of the evaluation process. And it's another example of the Cowboys reaching for need instead of taking the best player available. Would you cut Schoonmaker or give him 1 more year to figure it out? Personally, I think you draft someone and let them battle it out, and if the rookie is better, you move on. Let's get to the offensive line because there's one name that might shock you, but I think Tyler Guyton could actually be in a weird spot, depending on how the draft falls. Now let me be clear. I think Guyton is the starting left tackle week 1, and the Cowboys haven't done anything to indicate otherwise, but what if the board breaks in a way where the best player available by a mile is an offensive lineman? What if Kelvin Banks somehow falls? Or what if there's a guard or center they love in the 2nd round? If they draft offensive line early, someone's getting moved or benched. The guy I think they'd move first is Guyton, because everyone else on that line has more job security. Tyler Smith just signed an extension. Zach Martin is Zach Martin. Cooper Beebe was a 3rd-round pick last year and played well. And TJ Bass just got more guaranteed money in his restructure, which means they're committed to him, even though I don't love that move. So if they take an offensive lineman high, Guyton is the one who could slide to a backup role, or even get moved to right tackle if they want to shuffle things around. I'm not saying it's likely, but it's possible. And that's not a sentence you want to hear if you're a projected starter. The offensive line is one of the few areas where the Cowboys actually have some flexibility. And if they think they can upgrade, they might do it. But here's the thing, I don't think they should. I think Guyton has legitimate upside, and you need to give him a full season to develop, instead of panicking and drafting another tackle just because he's there. Let the kid play and see what you have before you move on. Now here's what all of this means for the Cowboys moving forward. The draft is going to determine the fate of at least 5 or 6 guys on this roster. And some of them don't even know they're in danger yet. When you have a new coaching staff coming in and new schemes being installed, the old players who thrived in the previous system don't always fit. And that's what we're seeing right now, especially on defense with Christian Parker taking over the coordinator role. He's going to want his guys and his type of players, and if you don't fit that mold, you're expendable, no matter what your contract says. The salary cap situation is also playing a role here. The Cowboys didn't have a ton of money to spend in free agency, which means they have to nail this draft. And if they nail the draft, that means the rookies are going to take jobs from veterans. It's just the reality of the NFL. and it's why you see so much turnover every single year. The front office is clearly trying to get younger and cheaper at certain positions. Corner is one of them, linebacker is another, and tight end could be a third. So if you're an older guy making decent money, or if you're a young guy who hasn't produced, you're in the crosshairs right now. But here's what nobody is talking about: the locker room impact of all these moves. When you cut or trade guys who have been with the team for multiple years, it affects chemistry and it affects continuity. And the Cowboys have already had issues with culture and accountability over the past few seasons. If you bring in a bunch of rookies and new faces, you better make sure your veteran leadership is strong enough to integrate them. And I'm not sure this roster has that kind of leadership right now, especially with so many question marks at key positions. Who's the vocal leader on defense? Is it Parsons? Is it Diggs? Is it Lawrence? And are any of those guys actually holding people accountable? Or are they just collecting paychecks? On offense, you've got Dak and you've got some veterans on the line, but after that, who's really setting the tone? These are the questions that don't show up on the stat sheet, but they matter in December and January when games get tight and you need someone to step up. So as the Cowboys remake this roster through the draft, they also need to be thinking about what kind of team identity they're building, because talent alone doesn't win championships. You need the right mix of skill and culture and leadership, and right now, I'm not sure they have any of those things figured out. The next few weeks are going to tell us everything we need to know about the direction of this franchise. If they nail the draft and get immediate contributors at corner and linebacker and maybe receiver, then maybe you start to believe this team can compete in the NFC. But if they whiff on picks, or if they reach for need again, or if the guys they bring in can't beat out the players already on the roster, then you're looking at another mediocre season and probably some major changes in the front office and coaching staff after the year. I know Cowboys fans are tired of hearing about potential and about next year and about building for the future. At some point, you have to win now, and this roster, as currently constructed, is not good enough to beat the Lions or the Eagles or the Niners in a playoff game. So something has to change, and the draft is the best opportunity to make that change happen. Are you confident in this front office to hit on their picks, or are you expecting them to mess it up like they have so many times before? Because I'm somewhere in the middle. I think they'll get some things right, but I also think they'll reach on a player or two and we'll be sitting here next year talking about the same issues. Let me say this before we wrap up. If you've made it this far in the video and you haven't subscribed yet, what are you even doing? We're grinding every single day to bring you the best Cowboys content on the platform, and we need your support to keep growing. Hit that subscribe button right now and drop a comment with your take on who you think is most likely to lose their job after the draft. Is it Mingo? Is it Bland? Is it Schoonmaker? Or is it someone else entirely? I want to hear from you, because the best part of this channel is the community and the discussions we have in the comments. So let me know what you think and let's keep this conversation going. The bottom line is this: the Cowboys are about to shake up the roster in a major way, and the players who think they're safe might be in for a rude awakening. Competition is coming at every position, and if you're not producing or if you're not fitting the new scheme, you're going to be on the outside looking in. This draft is make or break for a lot of guys, and it's going to set the tone for the entire season. So buckle up, because the next few months are going to be wild, and we're going to be here covering every single move, every single rumor, and every single roster decision as it happens. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss any of it. And I'll see you in the next one. Let's go, Cowboys.